Oh, aren't you Peter the Great? Weren't you the Russian emperor and autocrat from 1689 to 1725?
Yes, I was.
Oh, it's nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Rick.
Oh, nice to meet you, Rick.
Nice to meet you. I've been studying you for one of my classes. Will you not mind me asking you some questions?
Of course not. Go ahead, Rick.
Okay. Well, how did you transform the Russian government and military, and why?
I revolutionized Russia after my trip to Western Europe as a young man. I saw their Western culture as mesmerizing, and I just had to create a government that mimicked those styles because it was successful and it was powerful. So I created a Senate in Russia based on the Western models. It had separate departments such as those of military, civil justice, foreign affairs, and it also had enough power to rule without me. So if I was on a military campaign for a long period of time, then I could rest easily, knowing that the country was in good hands. I also divided Russia into several provinces. It was up to 50 at one point. And this allowed the central government to govern each different province at a time, rather than all at once, all of Russia. And it lessened the workload, and it was just more efficient by nature. And also, the military reform was also heavily influenced by Western culture, as many of my officers came from Western Europe. I also allowed the officer class to be, rather than being based on bloodlines, it was based on merit. And the same thing with civil offices and nobility. I allowed people to become nobility based on their actions. I also conscripted peasants into the military for 25 years each, and that allowed me to amass a standing army of 210,000 men. So that was also very significant.
Okay, very fascinating. Well, with all of these changes, did you change the culture of Russia?
Absolutely. Especially with women. I noticed that our women in our society, their identity was not good. They were isolated, they had to wear veils, they couldn't go out in public. And in Western Europe, they mingle with all the men, all levels of society are intertwined. So I introduced public events, social gatherings such as dances, I made clubs, I made festivals, and this allowed our culture to become a little bit more united in a way. Also, I introduced the concept of etiquette and manners to Russia, which was largely missing from our culture. We seem to be crude and a little bit dirty, unclean compared to Western standards. I made it a law that men had to shave their beards. And also, I couldn't stand the fashion that we had here with all our big, long, heavy coats. So I also made it a requirement that coats had to be shortened to a certain length, such as those in Western Europe.
Very fascinating. Can you better explain, well, first of all, I've heard much about your Great Northern War. Can you go into more detail in that, or about that?
Yes, I can. The Great Northern War was all about acquiring a port on the Baltic Sea. Without a port on the Baltic Sea, we have no way to trade via water with Western Europe. And that was also very crucial to me, considering I'm obsessed with Western Europe. So I attacked Sweden, who controlled all the coastline for miles around on the Baltic Sea. And we eventually won out, and I built a city, St. Petersburg, on the coast of the Baltic Sea. And that allowed us to trade with Europe, and my goal had been achieved.
Do you think what you had done had long-lasting effects on Russia?
Well, not to brag about it or anything, but I do believe that what I've done for Russia really left an impact on the country and also on the rest of Europe. You know, of course, St. Petersburg is a thriving city. It's still very important, and it allows Russia still to trade with Western Europe. But also, I think there were some bad impacts I left. For instance, I think I forced Westernization on my people a bit too heavily, and they didn't take kindly to it very much. And later autocrats didn't follow my policies of Westernization as much, but it just took some getting used to, and as the world modernizes, it just becomes inevitable. If all these countries are Western, then it's spread so far right now. Russia's a Western culture, and it's a world power. So I think I played a part in paving the way for my country.
Okay. Well, that certainly answered some questions in my mind, or mostly, actually.
Oh, I'm happy to help. Rick.
Okay, well, thank you.
What class do you have?
AP European, with a very good teacher. I think you would agree to Mr. Lorne.
Oh, I've heard of him. He's quite popular. All right, well, nice to meet you, Rick. I hope to see you again.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.